A reading from the Science of Mind magazine daily guides for, yes, the 13th of February 2026, which of course is a Friday. And if you like Friday the 13th, then, well, you get two this year. You get one this month and one next month. Why? Because February this year has 28 days, so everything repeats itself until you get beyond 28, right? The quote for the day that I found is Leo Tolstoy, who says, everything that I understand only because I love. I understand only because I love. And once again, I am in a quandary because Raymont Anderson is writing specifically to the Sites of Mind community. Not even necessarily New Thought, but Science of Mind. Religious science, the two things are really effectively synonymous. So I'm going to modify it slightly, and it should work for everybody. But the bottom line of what he's saying is that in New Thought in general and religious science in particular, we claim that prayer is a powerful force, and it's our belief system, that it's our thoughts plus our feelings together released into the divine mind that produce the results. And he's saying that if we really believe this, then why don't we get together with some of these sciences, and he relates what they are, and do some peer reviews, do some, some blind experiments, and prove that this thing works. That's essentially what he's saying. And if you don't need to know any more, hey, you don't need to go through it. But it is worth it because he kind of explains it as he goes along. But that is it in a nutshell. Okay, so if you just want it in a nutshell, that's it. And I'll even give you the affirmation. He says, as the divine expression of God, I bring my genius to the conversation and the manifestation of what I know to be possible. As the divine expression of God, I bring my genius to the conversation and to the manifestation of what I know to be possible. That is the affirmation. But here is, as they say, I've forgotten the name of the guy, the rest of the story. Okay, this is the rest of the story. First quote is from Michael J. Fox, who he was actually 29 when he got diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's, and he's proved to be a great benefactor in research into Parkinson's disease. And he says, medical science has proven time and again that when the resources are provided, great progress in the treatment, cure, and prevention of disease can occur. And if he, who has been suffering with Parkinson's, can say that, then I think that speaks a lot for our human minds and what is possible. And Ernest Holmes says, every new discovery in medicine is just as much a revelation of the divine for that purpose as is a new invention, a new interpretation of life, or the answer to a prayer. That's 10 ideas that make a difference. And it was on page 77, paragraph 2. And now this is Reverend Raymont, who says, can you think of any medical procedures or treatments that once were considered impossible but are now commonplace? Yeah, there's loads of them, right? Once successful heart surgery and organ transplants were considered impossible. Yep, they're now daily occurrences, right? The discovery of antibiotics and vaccines enabled complex medical procedures. They also enable all of other things. They enabled the prevention of disease, and they also enable treatment of disease. He goes on to say, why are these procedures now embraced as possible, even ordinary, when they were once rejected and thought impossible? Then he says, are physicians and scientists naturally open-minded? If so, then why are we, he says, as metaphysicians, not also naturally open-minded by the very nature of our practices? I don't know if they all are open-minded. There's lots of argument, but his point is essentially that if enough, I would say, if enough physicians and scientists and philosophers and similar people, if enough of them can be open-minded to allow progress, then hey, Why can't we? He says, American philosopher John Dewey said, every great advance in science has issued from a new audacity of the imagination. Absolutely. And I think it's part of human nature to put roadblocks in the way or just to refuse to consider things that were once fixed. You know, in a lot of parts of the world, as you know, it was believed that the world was flat. In fact, there's a bunch of people around, and I know one of them, who still believes the world's flat. And I can tell them flat out, it isn't. I flew in Concorde and I could see the Earth's curvature, which she said was the window, but it wasn't. I mean, you could see it was the Earth's curvature. The one that strikes me, though, is that doctors, medical people, scientists said it was impossible to run a mile in under 4 minutes. Your heart would explode. And then I think he was a student at the time, later became a doctor, called Roger Bannister, who was actually, I think, was he not? Anyway, he was in England, if it's Oxford or Cambridge or where, ran a mile in under 4 minutes. And then within a short space of time, a whole bunch of other people, it had never been done, or at least not recorded before that. So sometimes it takes things like that to change us. But the point is, there's a lot of stuff we don't know, and there's a lot of stuff that we can actually find out about. So he says, do we consistently nurture imagination, experimentation, discussion, deconstruction, taking stuff apart, find out why it works, exploration and reconstruction to ensure that new thought, and he isn't specifically saying science of mind, new thought remains at the forefront of health, wellness, equity, justice, and evolutionary change rooted in principle. So he isn't limiting this just to physical cures. The short answer is no, he says, but that doesn't mean we have to stay that way, you know? We can quickly turn into a confident yes, these things, if we are willing. Now, he says, if we're going to claim that religious science, science of mind, new thought are indeed sciences, then we must engage in scientific level, peer-reviewed, statistical, evidence-based work in the laboratory of life. Collaboration with peers in fields like psychology, thanatology, which is the study of death and dying, pedagogy, which is, of course, education, and jurisprudence, law, right, is essential. A world that works for all cannot be built unless all are included in the conversation and the healing process. And he's including scientists, etc., etc. When will we come together with all the arts and sciences to discuss the work we plan to do on this grand scale? Ernest Holmes always said that we should work in conjunction with other sciences because he claimed that religious science was a science. And he said you could prove it. And this, so essentially what Reverend Raymont here is saying is, let's put our money where our mouth is and work with the other sciences to prove that with the power of your mind, you can bring about change, physical change, change in people's lives, change in the way the world works. So anyway, so that is kind of a summation of it. The affirmation I already gave you, but for the ones of you who hung in here, I'll give it you again. As a divine expression of God, I bring my genius to the conversation and to the manifestation of what I know to be possible. Well, maybe I should have read that slower, or more slowly, right? Maybe I should have read it more slowly, but I didn't. It's gone. So my question to everybody who's had the determination to listen through this, what do you think? If you are part of a new thought community, that could be Unity, Divine Science, Science of Mind, which in religious science, they're one, now called Centers for Spiritual Living. If you're part of one of these communities, or you're kind of on the fringes and you kind of ascribe to these beliefs or similar beliefs, what do you think? Should we put our money where our mouth is and do it? You know, in emotional freedom technique, it got criticized, you know, it's tapping. They got criticized a lot, and I'm a practitioner, advanced practitioner of that. They got criticized by a lot of doctors saying it's just woo-woo, you know, and all you're doing really is distracting people. So what did they do? They did a lot of really genuine experiments. There's a lot of peer reviews now of that. You know, there's like genuine stuff going on out there to study it. So he's saying, hey, we should do the same thing. Yeah. But not just limited to science of mind, but it should be every belief, every philosophy that is akin to New Thought, that is New Thought or akin to New Thought. Now, the Japanese one, I've forgotten it, but it's a big organization that's also along the similar lines. And by the way, the idea of New Thought has been going on not for hundreds of years, since Quimby and Mary Baker Eddy in the mid 1800s. It's been going on for thousands of years, and I will bring back at one stage a list of people who were involved in it literally thousands of years ago. New Thought is not new, it's newly discovered and newly brought to the surface. But there's a reason why. There is a reason why. And I will tell you that in due course. My colleague, Reverend Lisa, of course, she was on this morning, I think like 9:20, 9:25 or so notification. She'll be back tomorrow around about that same time, and it will be on Facebook, on Creative Life Spiritual Center's Facebook page. And if you sign into that, if you're linked into it, you will get a notice when she comes on. And if you get a notice when I come on, because I actually do it through, I've got an app that sends it out to several different social media sites at the same time, including Facebook. So I am now committed to go do some grocery shopping with my wife. So until next time, please have a wonderful rest of the day. That is my prayer for you. And until next time, namaste.